Join Gem and I in this, our 6th episode, as we travel from Albany through to the Fitzgerald River National Park, along the beautiful Great Southern coastline of Western Australia. Stay tuned for some monster herring and fun in the dunes at an awesome spot just outside of Bremer Bay. Also, take a look at what the beautiful Fitzgerald River National Park has to offer, not only by car, but by foot as well. That's right, Gem and I are going hiking. Having had a late departure from Albany, it wasn't long into the drive before we found a spot to have a quick break. Pulled over for some lunch. What we got for lunch today, Jim?
Ooh, let's make up some nice wraps here, brother. Got cheese, tomato, cucumber, juicy avocado, $3.50. Definitely not a bargain. Bit of fish we cooked up last night. It's going to go well. Also a bit of beetroot, pineapple, side of the road stop.
Sounds too good, mate.
Yeah, it definitely is.
This is where we're at. We are literally on the side of the road today, just to prove it. We actually booked him to come past just as we were filming this, just to prove that we are just on the side of the road. Where are we? Near the Stirling Ranges today, haven't we? Just at the moment. But
that's it. Making our way down to Bremer Bay for Aussie Day.
Aussie Day. And so with lunch out the way, we were back on the road again.
We keep on rocking to the early morning. Say, eh, no, no. Come on. I say, eh, no, no. Don't tell the people that they got.
Having scoped out the campgrounds in Bremer itself, we decided that for our Aussie Day celebrations, we might be best off at this peach of a free camp in the Dune shrubs just behind Dillon's Bay Beach.
And I would do anything for you. It's true. It's true.
Dillon's Bay itself is about a 25-minute drive just outside of Bremer. This spot in particular can be found on the Wikicamps Australia app, and depending on your entry route is accessible by low clearance and all-wheel drive vehicles.
We keep on rocking to the early morning. Say, eh, no, no.
Yeah, what's for dinner tonight? Roast lamb, parsnips, carrots, spuds, bit of extra virgin olive oil, got some Gregory, and VB. Oh yeah. Having met up with a couple of our friends, Steve and H, it was time to flush out our Aussie Day hangovers and go and search for fresh feed. So we rigged up our fishing lines, dropped the tyre pressures and drove out along the beach to a rocky point we'd seen the day before. Making our way out onto the rocks, we saw just how clear the water was, and with us all being big fans of abalone, we jumped in with our ab knives to see if we couldn't scope out a few. Fortunately for this large wobbegong shark, all we had to shoot him with was their GoPro, so after fishing out a few abs, it was time to wet a line. H and Steve were pulling in some monster herring, and so I decided to switch up my rig and send one out under a float as a live bait in search of something a little bigger.
Did you see anything come out of the water then, or? I seen a bit of splashing, but I couldn't see.
After an hour or so, we got just what we were looking for.
There he is.
This bronze whaler shark had taken the bait and hook fully, and so before we had a chance to get a good shot of him, we had brain spiked, bled and filleted him ready for the table. From this same spot, we also had a heap of action on our sponsors Nobi Soft Plastics paddle tails, pulling in yet more herring and some skippy, which were great little fighters on the lie gear. Don't forget to check out Angler's Source Fishing Tackle on their website if lures are your preferred angle. With the weather having taken a turn for the worse, we had battened down the hatches at camp and took to the four-wheel drive trails with some other campers, Catty and Eva, to scope out what else the area had to offer. We started out by cruising around some of the rocky coastline before heading bush in search of some sand dunes we had seen on the drive in. The trails were tight in places and helped with the pinstripe effect on my car quite nicely. Still, it wasn't long before our path was cut off and we took to the dunes by foot. Endless soft sandhills to run around in and views for miles out across the bushland and the ocean to take in. It wasn't long before the big kid in us all started to show through.
How much fun can you have on a sand dune?
And then it was time to get competitive.
Okay, joining us today, long jump champion Jem and his two rivals here today at the sand dunes. And we are going to be doing the sand dune long jump. So from my left to my right, in order, on the count of 3, you're welcome to take as much run up as you like. No? Alright. Oh, she's playing it safe, but if Jeremy beats her, she still has to long arm scull a beer. If you lose, you have to long arm scull a beer, and if you fall over, you have to go in the ocean. And if you cross the line, then you have to long arm scull another beer. So, on the line we've got Jeremy's didn't cross the line, he's safe from long arm scull. Also safe from long arm scull. Also safe from long arm scull. However, Katie fell over, so now she has to go and swim in the ocean when we get back to camp. And that is today's sand dune jumping challenge over. Congratulations, guys and girls.
With the fun having been had and everyone feeling a touch parched, it was time to head back to camp for a well-deserved beer and some fresh flake. That's not before taking in those epic coastal views one last time. Leaving Bremer Bay and Dillon's in the rearview mirror, it was time to cruise on through to the Fitzgerald River National Park to seek out a prime little spot we've been told about, known as Point Anne. Upon entering the park at the western end, there was a sign which read, "Caution, corrugated gravel roads ahead," so we deflated our tyres accordingly to continue with the drive. However, nothing was going to prepare us for the conditions ahead. Even with the tyres deflated to around about 24 pounds, some of the camera gear still paid the price of these monster corrugations. Point Anne was nothing short of spectacular, with awesome views, great beach and a mint little reef which we had hoped to dive. Sadly though, the camp which was situated near the St Mary's River Inlet was full, so we made our way through to the 4 Mile camp which is situated on the eastern side of the national park. This, however, was not to be the end of our adventures in this awesome surroundings.
What a beautiful wedding, what a beautiful wedding, says a bridesmaid to a waiter. But what a shame the poor groom's bride is a whore.
There are heaps of four-wheel drive trails that are worth a look in this national park. We chose only a few, the first of which was to take us out to Cohen Head Beach. As we meandered through dry creek beds, we didn't think too much of this trail, but as we neared the cliffs, so the terrain changed, and so we were presented with our first little obstacle. Alright, so we've got a bit of a tricky section just here. Quite a big wheel rut just there, or washout. You can see where some Forbies have dug it out on the way back up, obviously. Rocks have been dug up here. We've got the boat on the back, so we just want to make sure that we don't crack the propeller on any of these rocks as he comes down. So I've just given him a heads up on a line. Just going to spot him through here. and we're going to see if we can't straddle over this bit of mud here and up on the rocks along that outside edge there, and should get through without bashing the propeller. Shouldn't be too hard, but it's always best to get out and check. So wave him through, nice and steady. Nice and steady. Come to me a bit. Yeah, beautiful. That's it. Now steady, steady. Textbook. Couldn't have done it any better if we tried. Just make sure he's going to be alright through this next section. As you can see, by keeping both car and trailer wheels high on the banks and as level as possible, we were able to keep the prop well clear of the rocks. If, however, one of these wheels had dropped into the rut, some serious damage could have been done. Perfect. The next challenge was this steep loose decline down off the cliff top to the beach. Using the low range gearing, Jem is able to use the engine to help keep the speed of the vehicle slow and steady. Maintaining a constant speed when tackling a loose descent like this is almost imperative. It will ultimately reduce the risk of having to hit the brakes, causing you to lock up and slide. Another surefire way of helping reduce the chance of sliding out of control is one that every four-wheel driver should know: tyre pressure. By dropping a few pounds out of the tyre, you can increase the tyre footprint, giving the vehicle the added traction it needs for you to keep it under control. Sadly, by the time we'd reached the beach, time was getting on, and with it not being an approved camp in the park, we decided to get back on the trail and head back to 4 Mile for another night. The following morning brought some glorious weather and yet more off-road fun. Again, cruising through some tight bush and out towards the ocean, so the views and the terrain changed. We had read up that you can drive on the sand dunes on the eastern side of the Hammersley Inlet, so to make an adventure of it, we decided to drive in, taking in the views from the western side before dropping down onto the beach. This is a drive that we would definitely recommend if you have a four-wheel drive and air compressor. The views of the large hills in the park along the bush trails are nothing short of spectacular. Once we had reached the beach, it was time to air down a little more before taking on what we had both decided was easily the most fun part of this drive: the sand dunes. With the tyres deflated further to 16 psi, we wasted no time in getting stuck in. Meandering through the last of the dune shrubs while following the trails of others, it wasn't long before we popped out into the soft white dunes and the real fun began. For any four-wheel driver, having the chance to throw the big rig into low range and punch that right pedal is enough to get the blood pumping, and there's no better place than a giant sand dune to do just this. There are, however, some basic safety measures other than setting the correct tyre pressure, which should be undertaken to ensure that you don't find yourself in a bit of a pickle. In big areas of dunes like this, it is advised that you follow the markers which have been set out to ensure that you stay on the correct path. Carrying the correct recovery gear is also a recommendation that you should take note of. A shovel, traction mats and a snatch strap will see you get out of pretty much every soft sand recovery situation. The last is to check any unseen side of a crest you are unsure of. Dunes are continuously changing with the weather, and so taking a short walk to the top of a dune to check what is on the other side could be a lifesaver. With having had our fix of low-range fun in the dunes, it was time to move on out again. Navigating our way through the twists and turns of the tight bush trail, it wasn't long before we were back on the blacktop, inflating the tyres and heading to our last adventure in the park, Mount Barron. East Mount Barron, shown on the right side of the road here, is just a short 5-minute drive from the 4 Mile campgrounds and is located on the eastern side of the national park. With the walk from the car park being a round trip of a little over 5 k's and the summit peaking at 311 metres above sea level, this was sure to provide us with a little bit of a challenge. The hike has a trail classification of a Class 4, which means you'll need to be moderately fit to attempt it. The trail to the summit is rough underfoot, and so sturdy footwear is a must. It's also advised to take plenty of water and to keep an eye on the weather conditions, not only in the winter but in the summer months too, as bushfires could see you stranded at the top. It is said you should allow 2 to 3 hours to make the round trip to the summit, and so with the weather having made a turn for the worse, we got our boots on, grabbed our water and took off before it got too bad.
Check out Jem there, up on top. That is the highest peak of Mount Barron. Full 360-degree view out over the Fitzgerald River National Park. It's just an amazing view. We've come up to the top, done a little bit of rock climbing just to get up, take this vantage point, spin around. You can see out over the ocean, out over Hopetoun and the inlet, and Esperance will be somewhere over there in the distance. Absolutely magnificent view. To finish our time in the Fitzgerald River National Park with this great hike and its awesome view really was the icing on the cake, and has led us to recommend this spot and Dillon Bay to just about every person we've met. And so we are now recommending them to you guys as well. Do yourself a favour and get stuck in. You won't be disappointed. Join us for our next episode when we hit Esperance and get to meet some of the locals. Exploring more sand dunes and heading out for a fish with a twist, you'll not be disappointed with this amazing coastline and what it has to offer. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and like our Facebook page to keep up with all our adventures. Catch you next time, guys.